I recently had a sit-down conversation with Faith Wesson, who is really passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. In this conversation, we discussed why DEI is important for all stages of a business, whether you're a startup or whether you're a corporate business, and how DEI actually helps your business to grow and scale within South Africa, but also on an international level. Here's how the conversation unfolded. Thank you so much for joining us today. So at Injini, we work in the startup space, the edtech space. We deal with high impact, high growth edtech companies, and we find that they reach a certain point where they struggle to grow their team. There are certain considerations that they haven't really taken into account. So my first question to you is, why is it important for the growth stage startups in South Africa to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion from the offset already?
In my opinion, I have to definitely say that, in my opinion, I think it's because we have a lot of marginalized groups in South Africa. I mean, our history alone from the apartheid speaks a lot that there's a lack of equity and a lot of access to, equal opportunities. And so for founders, when they get into that stage where they're building a business, this is the opportunity to even the playing field for everybody. And of course, these people do come with skills, not just bringing people from diverse backgrounds for the sake of it, but they are bringing skills, they are bringing value that we need. But we also, like I said, leveling that play field, making sure that those marginalized groups get a chance to be part of the workforce. So for me, that's the most important reason why companies should really focus on that on the onset.
Are you able to share any practical steps that these smaller companies are able to do to ensure that they are always aware of DEI and cultural sensitivities, and just always aware of diversity within the workspace, even in a smaller setting?
Yeah, no, I definitely think things like fun days, a lot of people spoke about team building is very important. People do it once a year. I don't believe in that. I think at least quarterly do it. But during the year, have weekly meetings, check in, and encourage people to share a lot more about their cultures. And during months where we celebrate different diverse people, use those months as an educational months and create awareness about the different groups that are in the company so people can understand, their challenges and how to support them. And more importantly, build the processes now. I think that's a very important thing, is for you to first, as a founder, to sit down and think to yourself, what does it mean to you? Especially if you come from a marginalized group yourself, having that empathy and saying that if I'm bringing somebody here, I want them to feel included, I want them to feel heard, and I want to advance them so they become a leader that opens doors for other marginalized groups. So having that in mind, you can already start building the culture that you want to see, get the buy-in from your team already, and make sure that you're actively promoting the culture from management all the way down to your entry-level team members.
If the leader of the business is not from a marginalized group or a previously disadvantaged group, how can they ensure that they are including these marginalized groups in the way that they build the company, in the way that they also just build their culture without it coming across as patronizing?
Yeah, that's a tough one when you're coming from, privilege. But I think the best thing to do is have a diversity committee, meaning have representation from different groups that are already on your teams. Ask them what the challenges are and use them as a way to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the policies and the culture that already exist in your company. So they hold you accountable. And they're also neutral parties. So that way your teams in the organization can trust you because they know that you're not the only person looking into this. There is representation on a bigger level where there's a panel of people that are taking in these challenges and making sure that you are held accountable when it comes to the policies that you create, and also when these microaggressions happen in the workspace, that you show zero tolerance to it. So definitely, I think investing in a diversity committee is something worthwhile, in my opinion, yes.
How can leaders demonstrate the commitment, the passion for DEI so that it filters down to the rest of the organization and so that they are seen as someone who is a champion for DEI in the workspace?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, they will need to just communicate first their goals concerning it and be transparent, and also let other people know through vulnerability and say, look, we don't know everything and we're going to need you to help us make sure that we put good policies in place and we have the right support structures for the different diversity groups within our organization. And that kind of also holds the people within the organization accountable for carrying this culture through. Because most of the time we're expecting like 3 or 4 people to actually do the job of masses, you know. So this way it means that you and I on an entry level, as we enter here, it is also our duty to uphold this culture and make sure that we're not part of the problem, but part of the solution. So I think it's about getting that collectiveness together and say, look, we all invested in this. We want to make sure that everybody has, you know, is included and they get to advance in their careers. Let's do it together and hold each other accountable. And I think by doing that, we go further as a team, because that's what an organization is, just one big team with a common goal.
Do you have any practical tips, like for like someone on a lower level who wants to have a tough conversation with maybe the manager or the leadership of the organization, maybe either like something happened or they have a suggestion on how things could be improved when it comes to DEI? Have you got any tips for like that person in how they can, I want to say, like manage up in terms of the feedback that they'd like to give around DEI?
Okay, I definitely think starting with an email to that person and asking them if they can allocate some time, maybe 30 minutes when they're available, that you'd like to have a discussion, tell them what the agenda is about, and then let that person give you their availability, and then you can come through with all your ideas and just also express why you feel they're important. I think, especially for the Gen Z, I was like reading that, you know, they're very bold and their culture is different. You know, they feel that right now that their life, social justice, they're all about, you know, being inclusive. So they're more likely, especially if you're a younger person, it can be intimidating when, you know, management is a little bit older than you. But once again, it does go back to the culture of the organization. Do we have that open door policy? Or, you know, are we flexible in receiving feedback from entry-level workers? So if the company is flexible in that way, it should be very smooth if you just send an email and just ask for a meeting with the person, and then you tell them your ideas, and then should move into, they'll probably refer you to HR, and you can have that discussion, and they'll give you the feedback later on and how they feel about that. But obviously in companies that don't promote that, you'll most likely be shut down, and then the decision is up to you if you want to continue to work in a company that doesn't like taking constructive feedback. So I guess that's the only way to know, by making contact with your line manager first and seeing how the conversation goes.
As a closing thought, do you have anything else that you'd like to share around like DEI within smaller companies, especially in companies that don't have an HR department? It can be any tips you want to give leaders, any tips you want to give employees, or just something that everyone needs to think about when working within the startup space, a small organization.
I think it's something people should think about in general, is that DEI is an opportunity to expand your business on a global platform. It is not a challenge. It is not something you have to do because the government is holding you, you know, holding you against your will to do it. But see the opportunity that if you can locally run a high-performing, diverse team, imagine when you then choose a diverse team on a global scale. You can tap into a global customer base, because now you're so used to being able to be inclusive of different cultural backgrounds and beliefs. It is natural for you, so you will thrive in that. So see it as an opportunity. So the hard work that you're doing now will pay off in the long run, because when you meet investors, like whether from Japan or different places, you are more comfortable in being inclusive. You may, you know, diversity for you is not something foreign. You're able to move with ease and also acquire the funding that you need for your business. So a lot of people don't see those benefits because they're all worried about the fact that they have to hire all these different people. It's going to be a headache. They want like-minded people just like them. But you can't innovate and be agile and have that competitive edge if you're surrounded by people that look like you, talk like you, think like you. It just really does not do justice to your true potential. So if anything, focus on the benefits and what it can do for you on a personal level, personal development, as well as for your company. It's really, the benefits are endless. So that is my take on it, is that invest in the work right now, put in the hard work, shovel all that stuff right now, sweat it out. But in the long run, you will be leading in DEI, because people don't understand is that Gen Z and Gen Alpha now, apparently, they're going to be by 2045, they're going to be the biggest demographic population, and they already have zero tolerance for companies that are inflexible when it comes to DEI. So you doing the work now means that you can get those people on board, that workforce, as well as they digital natives as well. So they're good and they can collaborate and adapt to the changing world. So you need that workforce. So rather start now to incorporate, put in the right components of DEI now, so that you won't suffer later on when you need to bring in that younger generation.